Thanks so much. Appreciate it. All right. So, welcome, first of all. So glad you're here. We're going to go through a little bit of AnVIL 101 today. So, we'll check out the agenda here in a moment, but we're going to mainly go through like what is AnVIL, a quick demo, and give you some time to try and practice things hands on. Getting in the weeds a little bit is sometimes the best way to learn things. Right. And you'll notice this bit.ly link up here. We'll try to add that to the chat, but that's going to be our agenda for today. So all the links, slides, anything that we're going to use today, you can find all of that on the agenda. And so I'm Ava Hoffman. Here's my email. Feel free to reach out anytime you want to have a question about any of this stuff or just want to kind of continue on your AnVIL journey. You're always welcome to reach out to me directly or our colleague, Shurjo Sen at NIH. All right. So hopefully you've heard of AnVIL if you are here. So that's a great start. But we're going to talk today a little bit about what is AnVIL. But before we dive too much into that, just wanted to say that we're thinking about inverting the model of genomic data sharing and analysis with AnVIL, which is the NHGRI Analysis, Visualization, and Informatics Lab Space. We love our acronyms in science. Hopefully you don't have to remember that one. AnVIL is sufficient here. But we have a couple different components to the platform. Essentially, what we want to do is empower our users to work collaboratively on data in a secure cloud environment. So we have lots of data sets. We have the ability to run compute, and we want to make it so that folks can collaborate easily and, just make good science because of those collaborations. All right, as I mentioned, we have the agenda, which is going to have all of our materials. You'll notice it's got just the registration link, of course, as well as some feedback. The billing project will come in handy in a little bit. We'll get back to that soon. And then this little question here about your AnVIL IDs. So when you registered, we asked for your AnVIL ID or your kind of email used to sign up for AnVIL. And so that's going to help us enable you to run compute and use that billing project. So if you haven't added your ID, you can do so there or just message one of us, myself, Natalie Kucher, some members of the team in the chat. Feel free to message us and we'll get you on there. All right, so that agenda looks a little bit like this. And again, all of the slides, links to kind of the activities and everything are going to be on there as well. Okay, and as I mentioned, feel free to add your AnVIL ID here in case you haven't made one yet and you're kind of frantically doing that here at the last moment. Okay, if you follow through that link, you can add your email that you use to sign up for AnVIL right here. All right, so first and foremost, what we're going to be doing today does require a little bit of funding. Sometimes science costs money, right? Our brain power is free, but some of the resources, if you work in a wet lab, those reagents cost money. Maybe recruiting people for a study, you want to reimburse them or things like that. So running analyses in the cloud does cost money. But however, we want to make that as simple as possible for you to kind of access those funds. Of course, there's private research funds through your grants or through your institution. But NIH does have several programs where you can kind of be sponsored to run analyses on AnVIL. And underneath the hood, AnVIL is using Google Cloud Platform. And there's several programs that enable you to kind of try things out on Google Cloud. So definitely check these out if you want to kind of kick the tires a little bit and play around, even after today, where we're going to provide those funds. All right. And don't be afraid to ask any questions you have in the chat. We have a great team here today that'll help try to address any questions you have. And we'll have time at the end for a bit of Q&A. if you have anything specific you want to chat about or any continuing questions after what we discussed today. All right. So I know it's sometimes kind of tough to do workshops online. Sometimes we get distracted. We need to go tend to our pet or our kid or something like that. But just to make sure that we're paying attention today, we're going to use something called Slido. Just hopefully make things a little less boring too. Um, and you can join Slido. It's just basically a website where you can enter or select answers to a question we're going to have. We'll do a little bit of brainstorming, things like that. So what you can do is go to slido.com and enter that code, or you can scan the QR code and join from there. So it looks like we have a couple of responses already. So you all are on top of it. I love to see it. We'll take just a moment to practice here. And as you can see, a very important bioinformatics question to start us off. And of course, we're not going to come after you if you're not on Slido or you don't participate, but hopefully it'll be a little fun. You'll have a chance to check your knowledge and things from what we're discussing. All right, should we see the results? All right, looks like we're kind of torn. Um, so we have some pineapple fans. The correct answer, according to me, is ew. But some of us are also like, maybe we don't care too much. All right, nice job, y'all. All right, slightly more serious question. But what is your experience with AnVIL? So, maybe you're an AnVIL expert, a little bit, but want to learn more. Just hearing about it, maybe for the first time, or maybe you saw our post on LinkedIn or our email announcement, but you're like, hey, that seems kind of neat. Let's check that out. All right. So I think most of us maybe have answered this. I know some folks are still trickling in as well. But it sounds like we're in pretty good company here. Most folks have heard about it, but maybe haven't logged in or, have just logged in for the first time and haven't really used it or played around very much. Maybe we know a little bit, but want to learn more. I think there's always more to learn. AnVIL is a platform that has so much going on that there are kind of always new spots to be discovered, new data sets, at least for sure, new tools, things like that. And some folks who've never heard of it. And I think maybe it's about right that we don't have anyone who's a super AnVIL user, super pro here. We're going to be reviewing some basics today, so it would just be review for those of you who are super expert, but hopefully you feel like slightly more on the journey to AnVIL expert after today. Awesome job, y'all. All right. So last thing before we dive in is this is really just the start of your AnVIL journey today. We're not going to walk away from this being, the top AnVIL expert, but once you start running your own analyses or working on your own data, you may have other questions. You may get a little stuck, but we're here to help. Definitely feel free to reach out on our help forum, which is hopefully easy URL to remember. It's help.anvilproject.org. And there you can post any questions you're running into, any challenges you're having, and we'll try to get back to you pretty quick there so you can get on your way. All right. I think that's it. So let's go ahead and move on to what is AnVIL. And so again, this may be a little bit of review for some of us, but if you have never heard of it, or maybe you want to review a little bit, I think this will be really helpful, hopefully. All right. And as you just saw, I went through the agenda and all the materials. We'll discuss it right here. All right. So, what comes to mind when you hear the words cloud computing? There's a couple options here. This one's my favorite. All right. 14 of us. And if you're just now joining, you've kind of trickled in here a little late. No worries. If you want to participate, we're going to use the same code the whole time. So, maybe you have you're watching this on your laptop and you have your phone out. You can kind of participate and select your info here. So you just go to slido.com, enter the code, or you can scan that QR code to participate. All right. This looks like 21 of us have answered. So yeah, it sounds like most of us are thinking big data. I think that's totally right. A lot of the biggest sources of data exist in the cloud. So Netflix famously, all cloud computing for the storage of the movies and video files and that kind of thing. But also genomic data, right? That could live in the cloud as well. And cloud is going to be more scalable. We'll talk more about this in a bit. So it is generally more powerful. You can use GPUs that you don't have access to on your laptop for sure. Expensive. Yeah. Cloud computing can cost money, right? For what we're doing today will not be super pricey. We're going to be pretty much working under $1 today. But yeah, if you run some really big and expensive computing jobs, you're training some LLMs or something like that, those costs can add up. Faster, yeah, maybe it's like feeling a little complicated or scary. And to make it a little less scary, maybe thinking about actual clouds working on their code, I think sometimes helps me not be so intimidated. All right, great. So let's talk about a few fundamentals first, in case you're like, I'm not really even sure what to answer for that last question. So I think it helps to think about kind of the type of computers that exist. And when most people think about computers, they're thinking about a laptop or desktop computer. Your personal computer can do a lot, especially in this day and age compared to 20 years ago. You can run Microsoft Word, you can do spreadsheets, run your favorite programming language. And that works fine for some applications, but you might have noticed once you start to get into the weeds, especially, you're doing some genomic analysis or pretty intensive stuff. Like, I'm thinking back to the day where I ran statistical simulations and my computer would get hot and like the fan would be going top level there. So they can run out of memory pretty quickly. And there's also a limit in terms of what you can store on a smaller machine. It's also hard to work collaboratively on your laptop. There are things like Google Docs and stuff like that, but it does generally make things a little bit more challenging if you can't come to one central place. And my laptop, I can make the password 123 if I wanted to, not super secure. And so there's no really rules about that on a personal machine. If it's a work computer, maybe there are some safeguards, but often there are not. So not a lot of rules when it comes to security decisions. And so some of these challenges that we have on a personal computer, personal machine, work computer are addressed by something called servers or computing clusters, high performance computing. You may have heard these terms kind of thrown around. And these are powerful computers you access through an internet connection. And typically they're going to be shared among researchers. Your institution may have one, or maybe a couple institutions share one. And there are also government-sponsored high-performance computing machines like Exceed. And these are more powerful, but they still run into some challenges when it comes to memory and file storage. And maybe you have a queuing system and don't want to have to wait a long time to use those really um, super powerful nodes or something on those machines. And then when nobody's using Exceed over or the high performance computing over the weekend, right? Those resources are just sitting there, right? Like nobody's actually able to use them. And so cloud computing is helping us address some of these challenges, right? It's kind of meeting a different need. And so cloud computing is also accessed through an internet connection, but works a little differently. And so most cloud computing today is provided by companies like Amazon, Google, and really all you need is that funding source, and you're able to kind of immediately use one of these largest computers in the world, but only using what you need. And one way we like to think about it over here at AnVIL is that uh, one way you can think about cloud computing is like you're renting computers, or maybe an analogy like renting a car. You have lots of choices. Maybe you need something smaller or bigger, depending on how many people you have, and you may have performance options when you rent the car. And you may have like added security, like added insurance, dash cams, all that kind of stuff. Um, but then you return the car when you're done, and you're not paying for the maintenance on that car. You're not uh, paying for the total cost, right? You're only paying for what you want to use. So it ends up being less than actually buying something like this outright. So you're only paying for the space and power you need as you need it. Cloud computing works in a very similar way. And so like our car example, personal computers come in a variety of configurations, but they're going to be expensive upfront, right? They can cost multiple thousands of dollars, and you want to be very sure that your needs won't change. Maybe you walk in and buy a tablet, but then realize, oh, actually, I'm going to need to run applications that I can't run on here, and then you're kind of stuck. On the other hand, cloud computing is funded by the hour and space for compute time. And so these are just a few examples of configurations you might choose. So, let's say you wanted to do 40 CPU cores, 160 gigabytes of RAM. This is more powerful than a computer that I can have on my desk, and maybe appropriate for some genomic analyses. So some of these configurations, they're kind of estimating about $1 to $5 an hour to run these. So, and then, there's a certain charge associated with storing data and things like that, but that's also not super high. All right, so to review, when we have standard computing, we have an individual computer. You get to use that one computer, and you pay just a small amount per use, right? Especially if you're good at maintaining your equipment, right? You could have it for many years. But in some cases, it's not powerful enough to do the things you want to do. But with cloud computing, there is no upfront cost. You rent the computers as you need them and pay based on kind of what you actually want to do, the capacity of the computers that you determine. And all of that stuff, the security, the software, almost all of that's going to be already installed. All right. So if you're familiar with cloud already, and maybe just like kind of the basics of Google Cloud or Microsoft Azure, interfacing with them is really tricky, right? They're meant for kind of software architects, and they're designed not really designed with intuition and like somebody coming at it from an applied science background. Not always super intuitive for us. But where AnVIL comes in is trying to make that process a little easier. And AnVIL also has other components as well. So we all saw earlier that big data is associated with cloud computing. So AnVIL is also a source of data. So we like to think, again, it has these three major components of data, community, and compute. But let's talk more about that. All right, so AnVIL is made up of many different tools and features. So in the Terra part of AnVIL. I know somebody asked in the chat kind of what's the deal with Terra and how does that relate to AnVIL? Terra is going to help us orchestrate our cloud computing environments and organize our data there. So you can use Terra workspaces to kind of configure and run analyses, share results. It's kind of like a unit of a scientific project. And Terra workspaces can also run Docker images or containers with pre-configured software and things like that. And you can start with a blank workspace, start from scratch, but you can also find workspaces that have the tools and the data that you already need ready to go. All right. Another feature of AnVIL is helping researchers by making it a little easier for people to find the data they need. So we have data models, indexing, querying, just to make the data more useful, organized, and easy to find. AnVIL also partners with DocStore, which is going to make it easier to share tools and workflows that you can actually implement on AnVIL. So that links up to GitHub. So if you write some code to do something really awesome, you can share it on DocStore for other AnVIL users as well. All right. And then where my favorite part comes in is the interactive tools on AnVIL. So AnVIL has implementations of Jupyter Notebook and bioconductors, kind of version of RStudio. So you can actually analyze, visualize your data and analyses in real time, as well as Galaxy, which is the point and click kind of genomics interface. That's also available on AnVIL. And one major advantage of Galaxy on AnVIL is that you can work with protected data that may not be appropriate to work on the public instance of Galaxy. And so you can access all of these resources within AnVIL's secure federated data and compute ecosystem, which basically means there's additional security monitoring on workspaces that have controlled access data. And you're not going to share anything with anybody unless you do so explicitly. So data access controls are inherited by workspaces to make sure that only authorized folks can access a controlled data set, right? So if we're working with sensitive data, we want to make sure that's locked down. And AnVIL helps us do that. It's really hard to express how much data is on AnVIL. So we're currently, I think at the last kind of measure of this, at about 5.5 petabytes of data, which is just kind of blows my mind. It's thousands of terabytes. And over 600,000 genomes, just hundreds of thousands of those, and growing every day. So we have a number of consortia that are represented on AnVIL, and you can find that data there. Many of these are protected data sources. All right. And so what can you do with all of these features, right? I just threw a ton of them at us. What can we actually do with this? So first and foremost, you can kind of check out that AnVIL data library or the AnVIL data explorer. You can find data for your analyses just to kind of get started, with questions you might have. And you can get updates and information on data releases pretty regularly. You can also just browse what's on AnVIL and what kind of data we have. You can discover workflows with DocStore. So maybe there's an analysis pipeline you're interested in. You can check that out. You can search for workspaces that already have preset data and tools. So we'll get on actually in the weeds here in a moment, but you'll notice there's a featured tab and a public tab when we're looking at our AnVIL workspaces or Terra workspaces. And those you can use to kind of just make a copy and, use any of that, link back to any of that data, or use any of those tools that are already ready to go. All right. So as I mentioned, AnVIL has some of these analysis platforms that are really great. So you could start interacting with those. And importantly, these versions of these interactive tools, the AnVIL team makes sure that you always know which specific version of tools, which version of R you're using. Just making specific releases of those so you can have reproducible science, right? You are running this version of R and these tools, and your colleague is able to do the same thing really easily. So the AnVIL team makes sure that those specific snapshots are available to you. And again, Galaxy is this graphical user interface. If you find bioinformatics just a tad intimidating, or you just want to hit the button, you don't want to mess around with the code, you're a busy human, Galaxy is great for that. And you're able to kind of choose from thousands of tools without having to do any coding. And if you really want to get in the weeds, WDL workflows are super scalable, flexible. They are a little more technically demanding. You may have to kind of go into DocStore to grab those, or may have to write your own, but you can kick off tons of jobs and just come back and see that analysis later. And so if you haven't heard of WDL, it's a workflow language that allows you to automate those tools over many samples. So looks a little something like this. We do have some resources if you're new to WDL. I was new to them a few years ago, and I just think they're super cool, right? You're able to kind of do tons of analysis and do it across all of your samples in an automated way. Kind of like submitting a job to your local high performance computing. You just kind of walk away and can come back when it's done. I did also want to mention one of our data services called All of Us Imputation Service. And this is one of our newer features to help you complete data sets efficiently and accurately. And it's going to use Terra and kind of diverse data sources to combine genomes from other data sets. Okay, just to make sure we're following along and we're not getting too distracted, we're going to have a little quiz moment. So what interactive tools are available on AnVIL? Do we remember what I talked about? All right, nice. Yeah, so these top three, nobody answering Microsoft Excel. That's right. I did not talk about that. But yeah, that Jupyter Notebook and Python language, that's available. So with that, you can work directly in the terminal with that version of Python. And likewise, you can work on the terminal from your RStudio instance if you want to boot that up. And yeah, Galaxy is also available on AnVIL. Great job. All right. And so, true or false, the AnVIL team maintains specific versions of software tools like Bioconductor and RStudio. You know what you're getting. All right. We've got 18 responses. We're getting there. All right. Awesome. We got the right answer. Excellent job, y'all. All right. And just quickly before we move on to the demo, what has been done on AnVIL? We'll try to be pretty quick here. You can definitely check out the amazing publications that reference AnVIL. I think it's pretty cool to see tons of different aspects of genomics, like metagenomes, applications to molecular phenotyping and things like that. So definitely check that out. AnVIL's been useful in, not just progressing that basic science, but also contributing to clinical trials across multiple diseases. AnVIL was essential in really making a complete human genome, right? So the telomere to telomere consortium and the human pangenome reference consortium all leveraged AnVIL to kind of get to a faster and more complete solution, as well as the Centers for Common Disease Genomics, a collaborative large-scale genome sequencing effort to really understand rare disease and variants contributing to disease phenotypes. So tons and tons of genomes required for this. That wouldn't have been possible across all these institutions and all these samples to do that without something like AnVIL. Okay, and so as I mentioned, that telomere to telomere consortium was powered by AnVIL. So tons of different samples across many populations. Again, a huge data input that wouldn't have been possible to kind of fill in those gaps without AnVIL. And so one of the ways this was made possible was the ability to rent all these computers at once. So the T to T alignment and variant discovery that was done as part of that project would have taken years to complete otherwise. But instead, lots and lots of computers rented at once to accomplish that. All right, and AnVIL's been able to enable collaborative research on soil metagenomics across historically teaching intensive institutions and other institutions who haven't previously been had many of the advantages of research resources. So would have been very challenging to do this without something like AnVIL. So you can see some pictures of us working to get soil samples for soil metagenomics as part of the Genomic Data Science Community Network. And at the end of the day, there's a lot of reasons why you might want to use AnVIL. So we encourage you checking out our Why AnVIL page to see if it meets your specific need, or maybe if you want to just share this with a colleague, hey, is AnVIL right for you? Definitely encourage you to check this out and learn a little bit more. All right. AnVIL might be a good choice if you need wet lab protocols, specific data sets, help exploring the scientific literature. We all got to write that proposal, right? Is AnVIL going to help with that? All right. Amazing. We're doing so well following along. Great. All right. So just wanted to remind us that there's a ton more to learn. This is just the tip of the iceberg. Encourage you to check out the publications, navigate through our portal at anvilproject.org, and check out our help forum. If you're really excited to get into the weeds with AnVIL, and maybe if you're in the Boston, Cambridge area, we are having the AnVIL Community Conference in about a month. And so there's going to be some really awesome keynotes, some kind of exploring of the future roadmap of AnVIL, as well as some invited speakers and workshops, featured talks from our community. I think that'll be a really fun event, and you can attend remotely or in person. So I definitely wanted to plug that as a future thing to keep on your radar. And just wanted to say that AnVIL is a huge effort from tons of different institutions, and everyone's really passionate about making it that analysis and that data more widely available so we can do good science. All right. So we learned a little bit about why we might want to use AnVIL to kind of invert that model for genomic data science, where we're all coming to the data and the analysis instead of sending it off into our own computer or institution. AnVIL has data, compute, and users, community, collaboration. We saw just a few use cases for these larger scale projects, but also collaborative research through the Genomic Data Science Community Network on our project called BioDigs. And if you want to get started, definitely check out that portal, anvilproject.org, or our help forum. We're going to kind of continue plugging these links throughout the training. All right. And with that, I see, again, there are some questions in the chat. Keep those coming. And so now we're going to move on to maybe a little bit more of the fun stuff now that we've got some of the background. We're going to get into the live demo. All right. Okay, so this portion is the kind of third thing down in the agenda. We're a little bit over for our What is AnVIL? I can't help myself. I get a little excited talking about it. But let's get into the demo. We're going to actually go on to anvilproject.org. We're going to launch a workspace. Going to do a lot of fun stuff here. Okay, so in the demo, we're only going to be using what we need, and we're going to look, it's going to look a little bit like this little car, right? We're not launching anything really gigantic. We're not launching any GPUs today. We're just launching a basic analysis environment. And we're going to be using data that's already available in a workspace. So we're not actually uploading any data. We're not like downloading it from SRA or anything like that. But all of this would be a little bit trickier if we had our own machines and we were all trying to follow along with different versions of software. We are going to use pre-installed bioinformatics tools. We're going to mainly focus on our studio implementation here in a bit. I did want to note that all of these materials are online if you want to kind of follow along or share or revisit any of them. And we're going to be working with public data today, but if you want to explore any of these tools with different data, definitely check out the Data Explorer. I know many of us are very interested in protected data sets or maybe already part of these protected data sets. You can request access through anvilproject.org through the Data Explorer. And then when you kind of select that data set that you need to work with, you can export that directly to Terra. Again, the analysis environment behind AnVIL. And so in the demo today, we're going to primarily talk about what happens over on anvil.terra.io. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump to the workspace. So again, over on this agenda here, and again, this is mostly demo right now. We'll have a chance to kind of practice hands-on. So just encourage you to follow along. All right. So I can see I now have this nice thing called a workspace. I think one thing I really like is how organized the URLs are. So I can see I'm in a workspace here, and I can see kind of what the billing source is, right? This is just a workspace that we created over at AnVIL Outreach, and see the name of the workspace as well. I can kind of see that up here. And I'm just on the main dashboard right now. I can see a little bit more about the workspace, see some references, and some cloud information. So I just know where this is in space. If I need to kind of check out some of those nitty-gritty details, I can see who owns the workspace and a little bit more information there. And so again, we're going to kind of play around with this workspace about MAGE, which is this multi-ancestry analysis of gene expression. So this is a really amazing project to try and really capture the diversity of gene expression in humans. So one thing we may want to do, I have this workspace, but this belongs to AnVIL Outreach. So maybe I want to make a copy of this that I can start playing around with and running my own analyses. One of the first things you may want to do when you're working in AnVIL is, or on Terra here as part of AnVIL, is going ahead and cloning this workspace. We're going to make a copy of it that is safe. I'm kind of in charge of the billing there, and if I change anything, right, I'm not messing up this original space. And in fact, I may not have write permissions, right? I may be able to copy it and clone it, but I may not actually be able to run my analyses in this original space. So let's go ahead and see how that works. Go ahead and click this drop-down button here on the right, and hopefully that's not too small that we can see that okay. So I may go ahead and clone it. May want to give it a useful name. Sometimes my initials. And today I have lots of billing projects. Hopefully you don't have too many. I might want to select this billing project specifically for this workshop. and go ahead and create the workspace. So it's kind of copying things over and making sure that any of the analyses, any of the links to data, all that is working okay. All right. So I now have my copy, and let's take a little bit of a tour. If I go over here to this data tab, I can see a little bit of information in what we're going to call data tables here. And these are just a feature of Terra to help organize the data that is on Google Cloud. So if I check this out, I can see I have a FASTQ file, I have VCF file, and this is from the 1000 Genomes Project. We're not going to mess around too much with this data today. I also have some data from Mage. I have expression counts and I have sample metadata. And I also have some, notebooks that have been worked on. These are not really like data itself, but just kind of a preview of those notebooks. So if I go back to Mage here, I can see that this file is located outside of the current workspace. So that just means it links back to that original space, right? I didn't actually copy the data, I'm referencing it. And I can see a specific location on Google Cloud. You can kind of see the long nitty gritty address there. You can copy it if you need to. And same thing here. If I hover over, I know it's like probably pretty small. The details of that are not super important, but you can see that address on Google Cloud. If I go ahead and click on it, you can get a little information, see how big the file is. For some of our more simple formats, you can see a preview of the data. And in most cases, you can download that data if you like. All right. So that's kind of our data tables over here. I could have other data added if I wanted to, but I think one thing that's really important to know here as we're working on AnVIL is that I can also just browse the workspace files. So I can navigate that like a file directory. I can kind of poke around in there and see what I'm dealing with. And I haven't actually added anything, right? I just copied this workspace. So not seeing anything there quite yet. All right, so it's helping me organize my data. And then I'm actually copying over some of those interactive analyses from that original workspace. This does maybe take a minute or two. But all of my analyses, especially if they're notebooks related to, like our Jupyter notebook, our studio session, a place for all our analyses, kind of nice, cozy location to organize those. But while that's kind of working and copying over, those notebooks are great and all, but I actually want to run some compute. I see this nice little cloud over here. I can start launching my cloud computing environments. So I can launch an interactive Jupyter environment. I can launch our studio or maybe a Galaxy instance. So let's just go ahead and see what that looks like. Right. So I know this looks a little scary. It's a lot of options here, a lot of customization I can do. But at its basic level, we're not going to run up that many charges, right? So we're going to do kind of a basic cloud computing environment. And if we're actively running, it'll be about 6 cents per hour. So not super pricey. And we can choose application configurations here. So by default, it's going to give us RStudio, which is Bioconductor, Python, R specific versions here. But I can also select other environments or provide my own. And I can provide a startup script to install additional stuff if I'm interested in that. I can add more CPU and memory as I want, but if I kind of get really ambitious here, it's going to make that cost go up a little bit. All right. And one other feature that I think is really nice if you're worried about, forgetting what you were running and you leave your environment over the weekend and you're like, oh no, I ran up all those charges over the weekend. This auto pause feature is really nice. Just after a couple, any kind of limit of inactivity, it'll kind of pause everything and it'll take a moment to restart. However, it's going to keep you from kind of ramping up tons of costs if you accidentally walk away. I think this is a really nice feature. All right. And then finally, with that cloud environment, a persistent disk is going to be where that environment is operating out of. So all the data in that workspace is kind of in its own location called a bucket. We're going to create a new disk for our interactive environment. So you can change the size of that if you like. And I think the default's okay here. I feel pretty good about that. And hit create. All right. And I can see now if I go ahead and click on this and open it, it's saying, hey, I'm creating this. You can navigate away and return in a couple minutes. It's going to take a couple minutes just to spin that up. We can try to create a Galaxy one here too at the same time. Galaxy is a little pricier and does not pause. So definitely want to make sure you watch this one a little bit more closely. Just there's a lot more kind of installed from the start. And Galaxy does take a little bit of time to boot up. All right, so I can kind of see the status of these over here and can see that they're in the status creating. I've got this little dot here to tell me when it's ready. I also get a little banner announcing those environments are ready when we're good to go. All right. So good news is those analyses notebooks copied over. And so if I wanted to kind of take a look at these, I can see usually see a read only version. Looks like we're having a little issue previewing that for now. That might have just been because I copied it over. But once that environment's ready to go, I can kind of start playing in the notebooks anyway. All right. And so a few of these other tabs, while those are provisioning and getting created, I have this thing over here called the workflows. So a workflows tab where I can find those WDL workflows that I mentioned previously. There's not any that are ready to go from this workspace that I copied. But if I wanted to go locate some, I could kind of explore, just go ahead and open a tab to go to DocStore and explore some of these reproducible pipelines that are available. And so if you're looking for a particular tool, you want to run fast QC, a lot of these workflows are already ready to go and you can bring them back into your workspace. So, let's say I want to run this tool, go ahead and send it back to AnVIL. And what did we call it? This is always the challenging part. See, I made a lot of versions. Now I'm just going to copy this. There we go. All right. And so just taking a look at the workflow opens up. I'm ready to run it if I want, but I can also just see it here later if I want to run it again later. Results of those workflows will be visible in submission history. And good news, our studio environment's ready to go. I could open it up and play around in it. All right. Just like our regular RStudio that we might use on our laptop, I can see the version. I'm able to access the terminal as well, but I can see I'm on the cloud. And I can see those notebooks that were previously kind of visible in that analyses tab. All right. So hopefully that gave us a little bit of a tour of especially like the Terra part of AnVIL. Of course, there's the menu here where you can kind of monitor all of your workspaces, monitor your billing and different environments. I can actually check that out myself and see, oh, okay, maybe you want to close those and stop those environments at the end of the day. Just make sure I'm kind of staying on top of it. All right. So again, feel free to drop any questions in the chat as you're having them. But I want to pause in case we want to type in our question or have any thoughts or clarifications, and then we'll move on to the interactive part. There we go. Want to keep the window open so we can go back and forth between the tabs here. Yeah, so good question in the chat about close the environment, stay on top of it. Yeah, so like when I'm done running my analyses, I don't want to just keep paying for that environment, right? We're only paying for what we need and what we want. So if I were to keep running Galaxy, for weeks and weeks and weeks and I forgot about it, I'm going to have to pay for that time that I used. So uh if I'm just like, hey, I can't remember, did I have any cloud environments that I created? I don't want any like RStudio or Galaxy environments just kind of lingering that I forgot about. What I mean by staying on top of it is just monitoring your usage, just checking out what you created. Is it still running? Checking out the status, where is that environment running? What workspace was it created in? And being able to pause or even delete if you're ready to be done with it. All right. So let's get a little bit of practice if we haven't already been following along. I think a couple of us even followed along with the demo. So nice job. Uh, so we'll go ahead and move on to the interactive part. All right. So the first thing I want us to do is go ahead and go to anvilproject.org. And we're going to launch Terra. Okay, you can also go to AnVIL Project or sorry, anvil.terra.bio. Going to take us to the same place. All right, I want to launch Terra. All right, and this is going to take me to the workspaces page. You may be prompted to log in. So I'm already logged in. I'm all good here. But you're going to want to log in with that account that you provided us. You know, having that email will allow you to use the billing project that we're going to provide. I'll give us just a second to do that. All right. So from here, you know, I've got Terra up and running. I'm logged in. That's good. But we want to open that workspace. And it's the same one we just demoed, but now we're going to do it together. Again, we want to clone that workspace. We're making a copy. And I did, don't think I mentioned last time, but as I mentioned, Anvil is pretty locked down in terms of security, right? So nobody is going to see my workspace that I created unless I explicitly share it with them. So you can kind of see lots of folks are able to see this workspace, including folks who are signed up for the workshop. Y'all are able to read it, but you're not able to run compute or analyses. So hence why we got to clone it, right? We got to make a copy that we can start to play with and run compute and do analysis. So I'll go ahead and clone here. And importantly, we're all going to be now using this same billing project here in a moment. We can't have overlapping workspace names, right? So it's good to maybe put your initials or date or something like that just to distinguish it from others that are using the same billing project here. And if somebody has the same initials as you, I'm sorry, but you'll have to come up with something else. So if I try to do this, right, I try to keep it the same name, it's going to tell me, hey, that workspace already exists. So I need to come up with a different name. Let's do Ava. And what goes in the billing project here? So if you click that drop down, if you haven't used Anvil very much, it should be the only one available to you. But I've got a bunch. But what we're going to want to use is this virtual workshop, July 2026. And you can find that right here in the agenda. So if you want to just type it in, that's also fine. Okay. And if you're not able to see that billing project from your dropdown, it might mean that we haven't added you to that billing project. So make sure you message either Elizabeth Humphreys and or Natalie, Natalie Kucher, and we'll make sure you're added to that billing project, right? If we kind of just let anyone use that billing project, right, we wouldn't have control over kind of who was running analyses, and we could accrue some unexpected costs that way. We want to make sure just you all here in this special event an activity are able to kind of run these analyses. Okay. And we'll try to diagnose any issues. Thanks for tackling that, team. Appreciate it. But if you're able to see this billing project, that's awesome. From there, we want to make sure we quick create. If we hit next, we're going to be asked for some kind of customization and stuff that we really don't need right now. So let's just quick create. It'll take a minute. As we saw before, it just takes a little bit of time to provision those notebooks, resources, and just create links to the original data, all that stuff. While that's happening, I'll go ahead and kind of close out some of these extra tabs here. All right, it may take a moment to kind of sync those notebooks and interactive analyses, so don't worry too much about that. And I'll give us a moment to just make sure we were able to kind of clone everything. Again, that's that drop-down menu, clone, and we'll want to enter a specific and unique name for this billing project here. And quick create. All right. So I think we're able to do reactions here. Hopefully, that's in our Zoom settings. Can we see a thumbs up if we are able to clone this workspace? Awesome. Got a couple. Fantastic. The sneaky side of me is because I'm an owner of this project, I can actually see the workspaces. But I won't spy on anyone's workspaces, I promise. Okay. Great. All right. So next up, we're going to want to create that environment. We want to get started with some analyses. Let's go ahead and create a RStudio environment. So again, clicking on that little cloud over here with the lightning bolt in it. And we've got to kind of pick our settings before we're allowed to launch RStudio in Bioconductor. So let's click on settings. Let's leave everything as is. We're not going to change anything. But we're going to scroll all the way down and click on create. Hopefully folks can see that. You know, sometimes Zoom crops out the bottom of our screen. Let me zoom in a little maybe. Right here. All right, so I can see, this environment's being created at about $20 an hour. And I have this nice little rate here just so I can feel like I'm in control of the cost. There's nothing that's going to be a surprise. And if I go ahead and click on this and click, I can see again, it's creating that environment for me. And if I click open, it's just saying, hey, we're creating this cloud environment. If you close this window and come back, you're allowed to do that. Again, if I want to check out that data, remembering that these are links to the original workspaces. So I don't actually have any data here in this workspace. I'm just kind of referring back to it. And I can see a number of notebooks. So a EQTL RMD notebook. So it's R Markdown format. And a PCA RMD notebook. So maybe we'll run some principal components analysis. Okay. So again, could we get some thumbs up if we were able to create an RStudio environment? If you created Galaxy by accident, you should be able to create RStudio as well. So you could have both running at the same time if you want to like right hand is working in RStudio, left hand is working in Galaxy, or just double bioinformatics all the time. All right, let's go ahead and open RStudio when you see that your cloud environment is ready. And hopefully those issues with the billing project were resolved in the chat. But if not, if you're having any issues, please let us know. We're here to help. All right. So just to get a sense of how the files and everything work on Anvil, remember I already had these notebooks available, but if I created a new one, that would appear in the analyses tab. But let's go ahead and open that PCA notebook. It's a very lovely one created by our lovely colleague, Fred Tan. And just like, our studio that lives on our computer or locally, we want to kind of get everything ready. We want to load some packages so that we can get started. But because we all have our own unique computing environments, we're going to need to install some stuff to get ready. So let's do a little bit of cleanup here. We're going to actually delete this pound or hashtag sign. And so that's going to make that, instead of a comment, that's going to be code that we can actually run. So here we're installing a utility package called AnVIL GCP, and that's going to create some helper functions to move data around on AnVIL and make them ready for us to use in our RStudio environment. So anytime we create these computing environments, I think I mentioned this, but we create something called a persistent disk, and this is a special location in the cloud for just that computing environment, right? It's going to be separated from anybody else's, and I can run all my analyses out of there. But if I want to use some data in that analysis environment, I'm going to need to actually bring it over into going to actually need to bring it into my persistent disk. All right. So from here, let's go ahead and after you make sure you've kind of removed that hashtag here, let's go ahead and hit the play button to install AnVIL GCP and go ahead and load up some packages that are already ready to go. As I mentioned, the bioconductor crew, they keep a specific release of RStudio ready for you to use. And it's got a lot of these like commonly used packages ready for you to use in R. So DESeq's already ready, it's already installed. The tidyverse, famously very helpful for wrangling our data, is also ready to go. If you're prompted to update some packages, I think you can hit no, N for no. I think that's okay. And I can see, it installed this package. It's kind of telling me what's going on. All right. So as I mentioned, we have these helper resources with the Anvil GCP package. And so one of those helper functions is going to be AV table. It's going to actually go into the workspace. So if I think, and let me go ahead and just open this in another tab. It's going to go into this table and it's going to get this information for me. So there's an ID here, and there's also a file with a URL, right? It's a location in Google Cloud. And so this handy function AV table is going to go snag that information. If I had a lot, like these are just two files, but if I had lots of information, that would be kind of annoying to copy over manually. So definitely handy when you have lots of files. All right. Yeah, so I'm not sure what that kind of funky error is, but I can see that I've created my object here. And so I have that information about those files in a nice little data frame. All right. So I have that information for those files, but I'm not actually ready to use them, right? So I need to actually bring them in to this cloud environment. I need to get them ready to use. And I can actually even see the files here. I just have a couple notebooks. I don't actually have any data or anything yet. And if you don't trust this kind of RStudio file browser, you can even go to terminal and be like, hey, I want to do my command line work and see what files I'm working with. No data yet. Thanks, Valeria. Appreciate that. If you're still installing, no worries. I know that can sometimes take a minute. But let's all kind of get to the point where we've loaded the mage table. If you're already to that point, you're doing great. All right, so if I want to see Mage, and again, if you installed and you're seeing this and it's just kind of hovering there, it's asking you, do you want to update kind of any dependencies? Just go ahead and hit N. All right. So how are we doing? Were we able to create Mage? Do we have this object kind of hanging out in our environment? Uh, I do love to draw on the presentation, so it's this one right here, and it should be a 2x2 table, very small. All right, and we love a good R error. So let's say I didn't have Anvil GCP loaded. If I try to go ahead and load that library or that package, if I haven't installed it, I'm going to get kind of a funky error message, right? It's going to say our package Anvil GCP is not installed. All right. So once we've got this Mage table, it's got that info about the address, all of that stuff. I want to go ahead and bring that into my persistent disk, into my workspace, or not my workspace, rather, my cloud computing environment, my RStudio environment, so that I can work with it. So I'm going to be reading in um, the counts and the metadata. I'll go ahead and run that. All right. So if that went okay, I should see this message about copying data to my persistent disk. If I refresh my files here, I should see those files here in my browser. And if I don't trust it and I want to see the terminal, I should see those files now on my disk. All right. Were we able to see the data here in the files pane? Let's see a thumbs up if we were able to see these. You may have to refresh to see them. Okay, got some thumbs up. All right, we'll wait just another minute for folks. And so what this is doing right here is it's saying, all right, well, I want you to do one of these special GCP or Google Cloud Platform commands. It's going to use the CP for copy, and it's going to use the addresses that I gave it for the first file and then the second file. And we're going to copy it to our disk. So that dot just indicates like the directory that I'm working in, which is the persistent disk here. All right, so let's get into the weeds a little bit. We're going to run some analyses, maybe generate some visualizations. So let's go ahead and read in the metadata. We're going to call this call data. We're using a function called read TSV. We're reading in this text data. We're going to do some sorting and some cleanup to the data. Not too critical there, but let's go ahead and read that in. Okay, if you get some errors that it can't find the file, that might mean that the copying over didn't happen correctly. When we're able to run that okay, we should see something called call data. And hopefully, I can't imagine a scenario where you're going to have like totally different dimensions of data from me, but hopefully that matches. All right, so let's explore that a little bit. So I can see that I'm working with a number of different samples and some attributes for the libraries, batches. But I also have this information about what population the sample is from, number of reads. This isn't the count data itself, but it's maybe some metadata. Oops, navigated backwards. Let me go back. Kind of funny if you have the swipe enabled. But luckily, if I navigated back, I can get exactly back where I was. But yeah, I might be interested in that metadata, the RIN number, things like that. All right, so I've got some metadata. And next, I want to read in those expression counts. This might take slightly more time since it's a little bit bigger data set. It's a little sizable. All right. So just taking a look at the top of that data, I can see different samples here in columns and then different genes here in rows. All right. So before we move on to the next step, want to make sure we have both of these objects in our environment. Let's see a thumbs up if we're able to get to that point. Call data and CTS should be present. All right, we'll get just another minute for folks. Okay, and luckily the next few things are pretty straightforward. We're really just going to run these chunks of code. We're not going to change anything. We're going to hopefully create a PCA. So we'll go ahead and create a DE-seek object. And again, DE-seek, one of these things that comes pre-installed, ready to go, very commonly used bioinformatics software. And I can see just a little bit about how that data is structured. And let's go ahead and plot that data. All right, so it did create this here. It looks like we're having maybe some issues running the plot. Let's try this again. All right. Cool. So I can see now that some of the variation among all those genes, their expression plotted on these different axes. So I think 18% of the variation among samples total. And I have different colors for different populations. All right, so hopefully we were able to create that plot. And last thing, just seeing what our software is, we can run that session info to print out the specs, great for reproducibility. We can see which version of packages that we used. All right, so I may save this image. Certainly able to do that. If you're previewing in the plots pane, so let's say I kind of get rid of this and change some of the RStudio settings. Try this again. And again, this is totally your, your decision, right? Kind of how you want to play around in your interactive tool. If I save that image, that'll go ahead and go to my persistent disk, just like the data files. All right. So were we able to make a plot? Let's see, again, let's see some thumbs up. All right. If you had any kind of, I know we're like trying to diagnose maybe something going on, possibly with somebody's browser in the chat. If you're having any issues or you kind of fell behind, again, all this is available and will be recorded. And you can kind of check it out, follow along later. But let's say, we're done kind of working with this cloud environment. I downloaded my plot to my computer, feeling good. I'm ready to shut everything down. Yeah, so yeah, good point. If we changed the settings to be, fewer resources, right? If I go in here and I say, hey, I want only one CPU, I kind of want to downgrade or something like that. And my costs are lower, but I may not be able to process all that count data. So yeah, if we change that, you may be having some issues. All right, so let's go ahead and shut it down. We're done using it. It's best practice, kind of clean up behind ourselves. So we'll go ahead and go into our settings for that cloud environment. And I'm ready to go ahead and delete it. And I could delete the application, delete, close down all the compute stuff. But if I wanted to keep my data or something like that, you're allowed to do that. That's going to be at like about $2 a month. But I'm good. I don't really want to keep that. So deleting everything just means you delete that cloud environment, the compute, but also that temporary disk that we were kind of working on. It's not going to affect anything in the workspace. All right. And you can see my rate's gone back down. I'm not accruing any costs anymore. All right. And that is our demo. So I want to quickly go ahead to our wrap up, and if there's any additional Q&A or troubleshooting we want to tackle here at the end, we'll have a little bit of time for that. There we go. All right. So let's wrap things up. All right. So importantly, I know it's a little scary when there's costs involved with compute and with research. But don't worry, you can always go to your cloud environments tab on Terra and you can see what's accruing costs. So if there's for any reason, you want to shut something down, this is a nice kind of central dashboard for you to track that stuff. So don't be afraid that you're accruing costs that you don't know about. I did want to plug a couple things in addition to, our conference coming up. We do have a YouTube channel where you can check out recordings of previous trainings. And we also have a few short videos. You have 2 minutes between meetings or something like that. You want to skill up in AnVIL in the meantime, you can do that over on our YouTube channel. Again, ask us any questions you have on help.anvilproject.org. Again, this is the start of your journey. Your data may be special in a unique way that we need some kind of assistance to work on. That's totally normal. Of course, if you want to attend any of our other events, we have AnVIL demos where you can kind of see use cases and ask questions. Those are monthly, but learning about those on the mailing list is going to be a great way to stay in touch. And then, of course, feel free to get in touch with any of us. My email, of course, is on here, but if you want to post any of your questions on the help or support forum, welcome any feedback there. Keep in touch with your AnVIL journey. We want to hear how things are going.